Day here, Caravan RV Camping. We are here on, I think we're on episode 9 of our CRVC TV, and today we are doing caravan renovations. Firstly, I'd like to send out our best wishes to everybody up north with Cyclone Debbie. I know there's a lot of widespread devastation and the flooding's continuing down south, and I know a lot of the highways are getting cut off and people are without power and water, so our thoughts are with everybody up there and we hope everybody's safe. I'll switch over to Greg and we'll get going. Hey mate.
Hi everyone. Again, hope everyone had a great week, and as Renee said, thoughts and wishes to everyone in the devastated area after Cyclone Debbie. So we all hope you're safe and well.
Okay. We weren't here last week. Both Greg and I were away actually. So sorry that we missed out last week. So we don't have any questions from previous weeks, but we'll just get into some having a chat about renovating caravans. It's becoming ever popular at the moment, isn't it, Greg?
It is, yeah.
So we might have a chat about, firstly, what to look for in a caravan if you're wanting to renovate. So when you're purchasing a caravan.
Okay, obviously the first things you want to look for in a van that you're going to renovate is the use of that van. So, you know, obviously what you're likely to be wanting to use the van for. You know, obviously look for a van that's going to suit that application. If you're only a couple and you're wanting, you know, a vintage style van, obviously it's no good looking at a bunk or family van for renovations. Look at the style of the van, the type of use you will be having the van for. Obviously the age, so whether you're looking to match that to a vintage vehicle, which is again very popular these days. A lot of people have a vintage vehicle and they want a vintage style van to match that, or it's just a cheap option into the caravan market. You know, obviously they are becoming very expensive, and it is sometimes a great way of getting into the marketplace and trialling caravaning to see whether you enjoy it before you invest you know, in an expensive touring van.
Cool. Okay, big topic. I know across a lot of forums is wood rot. I've seen a few people make the mistake of buying an old van and unfortunately they've got rot throughout ceilings, walls. Is there any tips on identifying if a van's got wood rot, Greg?
Yeah, look, there are some identifying marks inside the van. Even for professionals such as ourselves with years and years of experience, it can be difficult to identify. What you are looking for is any staining on the ply, particularly, you know, when your lighter plies, your purpley type staining or watermarks. That can be a great telltale that the van is leaking or has been leaking in the past, which means you may have some more sinister frame rot lurking underneath the ply itself. Obviously patches of mould, lots of ants inside the van, particularly little black ants that you quite often see in vans. It's another sort of telltale for us that there's a possibility of a leak, because obviously they've got a dry area in the van that they can live in, but they've got access to moisture which they need to exist. So those sort of telltale marks, any odd smells, musty type smells in the van, again, maybe another identifier that there's mould or spore plants growing in the core itself of the van that you may not be aware of. They can be quite expensive to repair and quite extensive to repair, you know, if they do exist inside the frameworks or lurking, you know, behind the wall surfaces themselves. So soft spongy areas in the van, again, another telltale sign. So have a look at the low skirting board areas of the van, or where water would be likely to collect. Start in those areas, so in behind the backs of cupboards, along the skirting boards in the bedroom areas, headboards around the front window areas, a really good spot to look. Also open the boot of the van if they've got a front boot, and put your head up inside the boot and have a good look around. Quite often when you look straight into the boot you won't see it, but if you look around the sides of the boot walls or in the boot roof, you may identify areas of moisture which you know, are not noted by the owner selling the van, but do exist inside the van itself.
While we are on the topic of wood rot, when I suppose when they're going through the renovation period, is there any tips in avoiding further wood rot or wood rot in the future?
Obviously, there's two main schools of thought as far as van framings, whether it be a timber framed van or an aluminium framed van. Obviously, those timber framed vans suffer from rotting in the frames. If you're going to build, and certainly a lot of the premier marks still build with timber frames, you know, it's not a disadvantage to use the timber. It has a lot of advantages. We still build in timber frames. Use a good quality timber. Get a Meranti, something that's a little bit more resistant to moisture. Stay away from your cheap pines, plies, or composite boards. You'll find they'll last you a lot longer if you're using good quality timber. So again, if you are renovating and you discover parts of the frame are decaying and they need to be rebuilt or replaced, invest in some good quality timbers. Some people like to paint those timbers again to make them a little bit more resistant to moisture, although I generally say just use a good quality timber rather than pine or something like that. It's quite susceptible to moisture.
I think that's a great point, Greg. There seems to be a lot throughout the forums on, you know, wood vans are out and don't go to wood frame vans, but I think that theory is wrong, so it's a bit of good advice there. Okay, and what about sealing? Is there any particular sealants that are better than others for, you know, stopping the water from getting in, I suppose?
Again, sealing is obviously one of the most critical points on the van. A good quality sealer. We particularly like to use a Bostik product. We find that it gives maximum life. It has a great elasticity ratio, which means that it stretches with the movement of the vans. They do move a lot on the road, the Caravans. So stay away from your very cheap sealers, and especially things like your Sellies, you know, all clears and roof and gutter. They become quite hard and brittle, and then when the van moves, fracture, and you've allowed water back inside the van. So, you know, when you go to the trouble of renovating your van, go to the trouble of using a really good quality sealant. You'll find them on the marketplace from about $3 a tube to $15 a tube. You know, we only use the expensive sealants because we want to guarantee that weatherproof seal for as long as possible. There's still service life on those sealants, so you know, sort of 6 to 8 years is about the useful life of sealant these days. All the good quality ones. Again, we don't really like to use the foam tapes and that sort of thing, some of the more modern methods. They do seal, they won't give you longevity, particularly if you're using high profiles on the outside of the van. It's very difficult to get a good quality seal with some of the tapes.
Okay. Welcome back, Herb. What have we got here? Herbert has asked, his van needs a new paint job on the inside. Is there a particular paint you use inside a Caravan? So obviously if it's painted, some of the vintage vans are painted rather than using the ply that we've got in our modern vans.
Yep. For the inside, as I said, more modern vans use ply. I mean, we're going back 35, 40 years now. They still use decorative plies, which is what all modern Caravans use, or composite. If you do want to paint the inside of the van, a good enamel-based paint is always recommended, inside and out. You know, most of the sheets are powder-coated, but if you do have to paint them, you know, enamel-based paints work quite well as far as, you know, lasting a degree of time. Generally, again, look for something that you can wipe clean, so that if you do have to clean the surface, it doesn't stain easily and things like that.
Cool. Okay. What else? What about chassis? Is there anything to look for when purchasing a van, and the quality of a chassis, or if there's been any repairs done to a chassis from accidents or re-welds? Is there any advice that you can give on that perspective?
Okay, chassis should generally, you know, most of the time they last a fairly long time. Obviously, have a good look underneath. Excessive amounts of surface rust or corrosion may identify weak spots in the chassis. So again, have a good poke around, maybe a screwdriver or wire brush, so that you can actually get to the chassis and see what its condition are if you're a little bit suspect. There are certain types of chassis that you may want to avoid. We had some chassis imported into the marketplace. The old Viscount Aero lights particularly had them, which were a lightweight press stamped chassis. They were very prone to fatigue cracking. especially around the suspension mounts, and where the outriggers, which are what supports the bodywork of the van, where they came back onto the main chassis rails, they were prone to cracking through those areas. So again, look for any cracks or fatigue cracking around the chassis that you might have. As I said, those aerolite chassis were particularly prone to cracking. They were really designed for European conditions. Our harsh Australian road conditions, they didn't really stand up too well. So if you're looking for a touring van that you want to renovate, I would say I would avoid that style of chassis, because they, as I said, just really weren't built for Australian conditions, and you do have problems with them over time with movement and cracking. So they're the main things to look for on your chassis. Obviously, if it's well painted and well maintained, you know, you should be fairly right there. A lot of the older vans that will be, you know, you're looking at for your refurbishments, they run a lighter weight chassis because they're only a lightweight van.
Cool. Thanks, Craig. Okay, let's have a chat about legalities. A lot of people don't know what they can do legally when they're renovating, especially if they're rebuilding from ground up, from plumbing, electricals. What can we do without a trade qualification?
Okay, so there's a lot you can do without a trade qualification when you're renovating your caravan. The two main areas that you really do require a trade qualified person for are in your gas installations and your 240 volt electrical installations. So all of your 12 volt installation, your general plumbing, timber work, framing, even your chassis don't require the technicality of a trade certificate. They do require you that if you've rebuilt that van at the end, that you sign your name to it, that it has, you know, has been put together properly and is sort of road safe. As I said, 240 volt and gas plumbing require a licensed technician to fit those pieces of equipment for you.
Are there any, not so much legality wise, but is there any jobs that you suggest take it in to get professionally done? Is there anything, you know, you talk, a lot of people are handy, but is there anything that's on the more difficult side that you would suggest?
Look, certainly there's a lot of people handy out there. Chassis and suspension is probably one I'd say is not a general handyman's area of expertise. The vans do need to be put together properly as far as your chassis and your suspension goes. Obviously, waiting on the ball and general layout. Someone with professional knowledge and qualifications, I would recommend there. Really, everywhere else in the van, if you're a reasonably handy individual, have some basic building skills and some common sense, there's heaps of information you can find out there on the net, on forums and what have you. There's a lot of vintage clubs out there which again you can join, give you lots of tips in renovating and accessing parts, particularly for those older vans, which can be very difficult to find these days. So some of them, just like the old cars, they're actually having them remanufactured in limited quantities for their club use and what have you. So my suggestion would be, you know, maybe join a couple of the clubs and go online. As I said, if you've got reasonable skills, you should really not have too much problems in building them. Otherwise, those that would like a fully refurbished vans and have no skill level or no particular building qualification, it may be one of those things that is suggested to a professional repairer or manufacturer. Sometimes you can bite off a little bit more than you expect, and they're quite time consuming in their refurbishment.
Yes, we've seen that time and time again. Okay. LED versus halogen or incandescent. So a lot of, obviously LED is only a new technology, and you know, recent years most of our renovations would be coming from, you know, 20-year-old vans. Your advice on replacements of those?
Okay, certainly replacements anywhere possible, go with your LEDs. If you're doing a vintage style retro renovation and you want to keep that original look, again, have a look on the marketplace. There's lots you can do and find where you've got an old fitting that you want to have a look a certain way, but you want the modern convenience and power draw of LED or 12 volt technology. So a lot of those fittings can be retrofitted. Some of the big lighting stores sell your 240 volt LED lights as against your 12 volts. So in the very early vans they had a combination of both 12 volt and 240. Again, you can retrofit some of those fittings to be able to accommodate both of the newer modern styles. Again, halogen is your next one on. Great source of light, but we've moved past that technology. They do burn quite a bit of power and they do run very hot. LED advantage again, very low power consumptions, and they run nice and cool, as against your incandescent light, which gave a unfortunate poor quality of light in a lot of instances, particularly in the early Caravans. The lighting quality on the 12 volt side, you were sometimes better with a candle than you were with some of the lighting that was provided in the vans from factory.
Okay, we'll chat about appliances. I have been hearing and noticing people trying to put a lot of domestic appliances into the vans, especially if they're not using their solar and 240 and just running off 12 volt. Do you have any advice on that?
Look, the only advice I'd offer is that those products are designed and built for a domestic application, which is a fixed installation, non-moving, used all day. Most of the RV market appliances are designed specifically for their application. So they're built to be lightweight, they're built to be rugged and withstand a lot of the vibrations or road vibrations that you get when you're travelling a caravan down your highways and back roads. So my recommendation is that if you're intending to use the Caravan as a touring van or travel regularly with the van, avoid domestic appliances. They can be a lot cheaper, but they're built, as I said, to be fixed in a home, non-vibrating. So you will find that you will create or get problems with those particular appliances after a small period of time of road use.
Yeah, it may be cheap in the at the beginning, but not in the long run. Howard, my daughter is always telling me I need to spruce up the inside of my van. Where are your favourite place to get some affordable accessories to keep the women happy? Well, we actually, I'll just show you over on our bed here. Howard, we don't have a lot to spruce up the van, but just a few cushions, some nice coloured toweling. Over by Greg, we've got a little plant there, which I always say pack away when you're in travel, but we get all of our stuff from Trade Secrets, if that helps. So Trade Secrets has got a little home and house and home area, so jump in there. Doesn't take much to spruce up the van. Maybe ask your daughter for Father's Day to do it for you. Okay. Altering layouts, some do's and don'ts, factoring in your chassis and weights.
Again, another great question. There are some considerations. Obviously, your chassis layout, as I said, with your suspension, is designed particularly to keep the van balanced when it's towable with a nose forward weighting. Changing or substantially changing the layouts inside the van, you have to be very mindful of where you're moving those weights to. If you remove excessive amounts of weight from the tow bar or drawbar to the rear of the van, you may find it's very unstable to tow and in cases untowable. So when you're doing that, be very mindful. The other thing I'd say be mindful of is your resale value. What you may like may not suit anybody else. So again, be mindful when you're doing it. Is this something that I'm going to keep forever, or will I want to sell it? And how much will I get for it when I want to sell it? So try to keep within standard layouts where it's possible. Obviously, that way you're going to maximise your resale value because it'll appeal to a lot of people. Those very specific layouts that are done for unique individuals make them very hard to sell later because, as I said, they only suit a very, very small amount of people, and therefore you've got to find those individuals who want to buy that particular van.
Thanks, Greg. Any space saving tips? So pull out pantries, outside barbies.
There's heaps of space saving tips. There's some great places. Howard Storage and a few of those offer some great innovative ideas as far as saving. We love to use in ours, even from Audi, a lot of the collapsible bowls and jugs and what have you. So again, when you're not using them, they all concertina down. They take up a lot less room in the cupboard. You can get cutlery holders and what have you, again, which will store that cutlery and china and what have you in specific locations very neat and concisely. One of the biggest thing everyone's chasing is space inside the van. So again, look for containers that are stackable, that slide, so again you don't have to unpack your whole cupboard or underneath the complete bed to access different areas, and keep them well labelled, and even maybe do yourself a plan so that you know in the van this is where you store certain items. So again, you're not rummaging through your entire van looking for a particular item. You can quickly go to your plan and say, okay, bedding's in this area, my cutlery's here, my hardware's somewhere else. So you can write yourself a little plan. You know, okay, that particular item which you may not have used for 12 months or more, this is its location, so you're not having to turn the whole van upside down to find it.
Great tip. I'll just show you guys, these are becoming very popular in a lot of vans. We've got the slide outs. I even have them in my kitchen at home. So fantastic for using the deep cupboard space. If your van doesn't have them, you can get them from Bunnings, you can get them on our online store, Howard Storage World, lots of places. So they're really, really handy. Okay, what else can we go through with? Outside accessories. What's your favourite, and tips on the best outside accessories to save on your internal? If you don't have a lot of internal space for a kitchen, what's your best design outside?
Okay. For outside, as I've probably said in the past, if you've been tuning in over the weeks, my favourite accessory is my roll-out barbecue. I use it extensively. I do find it a fantastic item. It rolls away in underneath the side of our bedroom area, so it takes up very little room. It means we don't have to be cluttered inside the caravan itself necessarily for cooking. We also use a drop-down table, again, which I find very handy for storing things outside. Some of the other ideas which are fantastic, which have come onto the marketplace, are your chassis lockers, which you can bolt down underneath the side of the van, A-frame lockers and bumper lockers. Obviously, again, be mindful when you're fitting some of this equipment where you're placing it and what you're likely to be putting in it, because you do want to keep your van still balanced. So you, again, be very mindful of what you're putting and where you're putting it. But there are some great things that you can fit outside, your outdoor showers and things like that again. So you know, if the kids come up off the beach, they don't have to climb inside the van all sandy and dirty. They can just pull the shower out outside and hose off. Makes life so much easier.
I actually went to one of the recent shows, and I saw one of the Daewoo front-loader washing machines outside. So it's actually in a little cupboard, recessed cupboard outside. So I think we're getting more and more accessories put outside the van. What else? Okay, a bit of safety. So it's not just about making the van look good. I think everybody's need to remember, if you're stripping and regutting, what are some safety accessories that you need to remember putting back into the van?
Okay, so as we discussed with your gas and your 240 volt, you want a licensed technician. You want to make sure all of those are checked. A fire extinguisher, at least one, is mandatory. Fly blanket, if you cook inside, you want to make sure is in a nice, handy, accessible area. Smoke detectors, again, another fantastic idea, whilst not mandatory yet. You know, obviously a really smart idea. And a lot of people fit gas detectors. The gas detectors can be a little bit difficult at the moment. Sometimes we do find we get quite a few complaints from the gas detectors, as they're quite sensitive. So not only will gas set them off, but a lot of other products, unfortunately. So, but those sort of items, you want them in a location of ease. You also want to make yourself a little emergency plan. Just like the van we're sitting in today, it's a touring van. So the bedroom area is at the front, the door's at the back of the van, or almost at the back of the van. So in the event of, say, a fire that broke out in the kitchen location where we are at the moment, and you're in the bedroom, you want to know how you're going to exit the van. So have a strategy, make sure you test that strategy so that you can get out easily. what you would do in the event of emergency, should you get blocked in by the main door and need to get out of the van in a hurry. So again, don't just confine that to one exit. Make sure you've got a couple of possible escapes outside of the van in the need of an emergency to quickly vacate the van.
Great. Okay, thanks Greg. Alright, that might wrap us up for Caravan renovations. Is there anything that you would like to add into this segment?
Look, as I said, there's lots of ways to get into caravanning. Renovating is a fantastic way, particularly if you're a little bit handy. It can be a great bonding exercise for the family. It's not overly difficult. There are a lot of repairers who'll be able to supply products and parts for you to be able to do it. If you don't feel competent, again, there's lots of competent repairers out there that can take that project dream into a reality for you.
Cool. Thanks Greg. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week, mate.
Enjoy, everybody.
Okay guys, thank you. So that'll wrap us up today. Next week we did a few weeks ago a live session on hitching a caravan, or hitches for a caravan. Next week we're going to do one outside, show you a hitch setup, and we're going to go through some different weight distribution hitches and show you the different trunnion styles, go through the Heyman Reese Pro Series Ease Lift, and explain the differences in your shanks and why you may need a shank. So hopefully, weather pending, we will be outside, and we'll do that one next week, but we'll keep you up to date. Stay safe everyone up north, and we will see you next week. Thanks guys.